I used to wonder why I disliked life so much. And then along the way, I realized how our world is set up is conditioning me to dislike my life unless I'm actively fighting against the grain, actively trying to not follow the world. You look around and you can easily see that phone addiction is more than normal. It's normal to be rushing everywhere, and you either work till you're dead or you're on the opposite side of the spectrum where you're so lazy you can't even lift a finger because instant gratification has taken over. We have the world at our fingertips. We can get food delivered to our door in an instant, and we have all these movies and TVs at our access point at any single point. And then I think about it, the way the world is set up is just bound to make life a little bit challenging. With that being said, welcome to the Creating a Life You Love podcast with Adriana. If you don't know me already, my goal is to really focus on the practices that we can implement in our life to enhance our spiritual, mental, and physical health. Big emphasis on spiritual health and building a relationship with God is truly the center of all of this. So, yeah, why is our culture so unhappy? I wanted to talk about a few reasons for that today and ultimately how to create a life that you love. When our lives are filled with, distractions, we seem to be having a hard time at being emotionally in tune with ourselves, and finding a minute of rest in our busy lives just seems to be impossible. But it is possible, and that's what I wanted to encourage you with today. It may be more difficult to do considering that we have all these distractions, and life is not like it was hundreds or even 100 years ago or before technology, in the way that it is harder to not be distracted because life just isn't as simple as it used to be. And while this technology that we have today is definitely can definitely make life easier and benefit us in so many ways, if we don't learn how to use it, it will use us and ultimately be the death of us and just take us over. So, since I started my walk with God at the end of 2021, I started learning, why I was so unhappy with my life. And that was really because I didn't have Him. But there were obviously the reasons that I mentioned earlier that were causing a lot of unhappiness, among other things. But it wasn't until recently that I have really evaluated how I live my life instead of just going with the flow of life, even the flow of how Christians live. I want to make sure that I am living a life for God, living a godly life, because ultimately I know that that is the only way I'm going to find peace, because every other place I've looked, there is none. Now, lately, I've just been so tired of being surrounded by everything of this world, the busyness, the craziness, the chaos. And since this is how our world runs, it's very hard to just completely rest. So I kind of needed to take a few days to completely remove myself. Now, I've mentioned this in earlier episodes. We can't just go and live like monks. Well, we could maybe if we were called to do that, but most of us are not called to do that. So how do we function in our day-to-day lives in this world and not get burdened down by the just difficulties that our world brings us? So anyway, like I said, I decided to go on a 3-day spiritual retreat is what I decided to call it. It wasn't like an event I went to, just decided to do it with my boyfriend and just take time away from the world to focus on spending time with God, reading the Bible, praying, journaling, spending time outside, and not being on my phone, not to check my emails, not to text, certainly not to use social media, to listen to music only in the car, but that was it. And so I was so disconnected from my daily life, and it was amazing, but obviously this isn't something that is feasible to do because we have responsibilities. But I want to implement the things that I've learned into my daily life and of course, accommodate them to work. And I wanted to share that with you because maybe you're in this slump that you just can't seem to get out of. You're wondering why you're so unhappy in life. Or maybe you're actually thriving in life and you just kind of want to hear these three reasons why I would say we're unhappy as a society because they can definitely be eye opening. And I think that I was kind of hit with like them in a new way where I was like, whoa, this is kind of new. Like I knew this, but like this level is new. So the first thing I learned on this trip was that distractions are truly like the death of us. Like they take us out of tune with our bodies. And I feel like, especially in our world today, count how many times I say this phrase, but especially in our world today, technology, being on our phones, such an easy distraction. And this weekend, like I said, I didn't go on my phone. And it was so nice because I feel like I've been so conditioned to pick up my phone whenever I'm in like a bad mood. Say I just got off the phone with a client at work and I'm like, oh my gosh, super like anxious. Did that call go okay? Like, oh my gosh. Now, instead of just feeling the emotions in my body, noticing like, okay, why am I even feeling anxious? Like, could I have said something better? Or maybe everything went fine. I'm just getting in my head. Like, what's wrong? Instead of doing that, what I found is I will. Oh, let me just check my phone real quick. Let me see if anyone texted me. Like not even just to go on social media, but just to like see if anyone texted me or check my emails just to go on my phone because I'm so conditioned to do that. And I've talked about in prior episodes on phone addiction where I used to spend like 10 hours a day on my phone, like 8, 10 hours. I would be on my phone constantly and it was truly a phone addiction. And while I've definitely, not had that anymore where I'll sit on my couch and, scroll, I still notice these little things of anytime I have a negative emotion going on my phone. And that's not a good coping strategy because what does it do? It really just makes you feel worse. It covers up the problem. It's a band aid and does not solve the problem. So, something that I would suggest that you do, maybe you don't think you have a phone addiction, maybe you do and like you're painfully aware of it and you're like, how do I get rid of this? But like wherever you are, I feel like this is still a good thing to do. Whenever you go on your phone, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, ask yourself, why am I going on my phone right now? Or if this is like TV or, whatever technology it is, why am I opening my computer? Why am I going on my phone? Why am I watching this right now? And what am I feeling as I'm doing it? So, why am I going on here and what am I feeling? So, say you're super stressed with like exams that you're studying for, and you open up your laptop just to see what's like on Netflix. So you ask yourself, wait a minute, why am I opening my laptop to see what's on Netflix? Why am I doing that? And you're like, oh, I'm doing that just because I want to avoid working. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling as I'm doing this? Well, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling really stressed, I'm feeling anxious, and I want to take away those feelings, so I'm going to go on here. You see how that works? Like, that's not a good thing because then what's going to happen? You're going to go on Netflix, you're going to watch shows, you're probably going to binge watch some things because that's what I used to do. And then before you know it, it's going to be too late. You didn't study for your exams. You're really mad at yourself. You're really tired. You don't want to know what to do. And you think you're going to fail your exams. And the self hatred is building up because you're mad at yourself. But then you also are stressed and overwhelmed. So, you know what I mean? It just doesn't solve anything. Whereas if you were to ask yourself, okay, why am I doing this? What's the reason why I'm going on here? And what am I feeling? Then you can think about it and then close your computer, take a few minutes to go outside and catch your breath, pray, do something different to get out of this stressed and overwhelmed headspace, and then come back and study. You see what I mean? It's such a more efficient way, but because we're conditioned to pick up our phones, it's not great. And I've seen this like with children, especially in this like new generation of children where their parents, anytime the children is getting upset or throwing a tantrum, whatever it is, what do they give them? The phone, the iPad, We see these good kids walking around with iPads. It's like that can't be healthy. That just cannot be healthy. Like I don't know, it just can't be healthy, right? And so we're teaching these kids from a young age that whenever you're upset, whenever you're crying, whenever you're in a bad mood, go watch some TV, go on your phone, instead of asking them, what are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? But anyway, that's a whole different rant. I don't even have kids, but I just see that, and it makes me think of that. But anyway, why don't we start asking ourselves these questions? And this is what I am going to make more of an effort of, because I've found, even though I might not scroll for endless hours like I used to, it's still a coping strategy that I will pick up my phone and go on social media, scroll on my camera roll, whatever the heck I do. And that's not a good use of my time. Another thing is making your life simpler, and simpler in the way that I think a lot of times we're like, well, my life is so busy. I don't have time to like sit and pray. I don't have time to like journal. I don't have time to think about what I'm thinking. Maybe you don't have time because of the distractions that are taking over your life. So for me, I used to think that I didn't have time to pray every night and journal. And then I realized every single night I was watching a TV show. Now, it would be like a 30-minute TV show, but then I would watch maybe another one. And while I think once in a while it's great to just relax, watch a movie, have fun with friends, and just like, chill out, right? I think that it can be excessive. And for me, I was realizing that every night I would come home, I would be tired from work, and I would just watch TV. And I noticed that this wouldn't put me in a good headspace before bed. Even if the shows were funny, even if they were great, when I was doing this excessively, it wasn't getting to the root of the problem. And the problem was I was trying to cope and cover up my, exhausted self and tiredness from the day by watching this. So now instead, what I do is I have made life simpler. I have, instead of thinking of, oh, I have to add in prayer, I have to add in journaling, I think of what can I take away to make life simpler. So I took away watching TV at night. Watching TV in general, unless I'm with friends, then we get to watch it all together. But watching TV alone, no. For me in this season, I don't want to use my time that way. But anyway, what I've seen is now I sing like every night, play the piano and sing my prayers, or I'll journal, and I'll have that time to just like reset my mind for the next day. And it's truly transformed my life, even that little task of just changing it around. And that's what I'm saying about, we think we don't have time in our day to day life. But look at what is distracting you. See what is distracting you, and then you'll realize I do have time in my day to day life. I have 30 minutes on my lunch break where I can sit in silence and I can just decompress. But instead, what I'm doing is I'm going on my phone. And this is also something that I've been making a habit of. When I go to my lunch break from work, I sit there and I ask myself, do I really need to go on my phone right now? Like, do I really need to go and watch YouTube? No, I don't. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to eat, and I'm going to eat in the silence. And then maybe in a few minutes, I'll go on my phone. And a lot of times, what happens is I find I don't even want to go on my phone anymore, because what I realized was this was just a conditioned thing of every time we go to lunch, we go on my phone, and it's a habit. But once you ask yourself, wait a minute, why am I doing this? You start to realize, do I even want to do this? No, I actually enjoy looking at the trees. I actually enjoy looking at the sky. I enjoy looking at nature and looking at the earth. And this is also something I realized on this spiritual retreat. I spent a lot of time outside just admiring Earth. And I felt like I did when I was like a little child. I felt like I did when I would run around and play in the dirt and, play with the butterflies and the little insects. Like, I felt like a child, and I felt so like light just looking around at nature. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. We can still be in tune with our bodies and with nature, you know what I mean? And so when I was sitting outside, I would just like pick things to focus on, like, wow, look at that beautiful bird, like, wow, look at that, the beautiful sky, and just focus my attention on that. And I felt such peace. And now I got back from this spiritual retreat and I want to make sure that I don't go back to picking up my phone whenever for no reason, whatever it may be. So I'm going to make sure that I keep these habits in place and that I remind myself of how great it is to just look at my surroundings instead of constantly picking up my phone. I've talked about this in prior episodes, but the habits that you do on a daily basis, that's what is going to form you. I actually talk about this in probably every single episode, but I've talked about before where picking up your phone first thing in the morning is setting up your day for failure. So I don't want to pick up my phone first thing in the morning. I've made a good habit of not going on social media first thing in the morning, but I'll still pick up my phone occasionally and check my text messages or check my emails, and I don't think that's good. So really focusing on not doing that in the morning and just telling myself, okay, just a few more minutes, you can stay off your phone. Just a few more minutes, just sit here, drink your coffee, pray, read the Bible, journal, and the peace you feel after is just so rewarding. It's not that instant gratification where you feel that, dopamine hit and then it leaves. But anyway, that was a little bit of a long spiel, but I really am passionate about this subject because I see how phone addiction really took over my life. And I think it's so important to evaluate what you're doing. So, something that you can do that I did on the spiritual retreat was evaluated the way that I used my phone. And the way that I want to use my phone now is anytime I go on my phone, I ask myself, why are we going on your phone? Is it to text this person and ask them to hang out? Or is it to go on social media and scroll because you're feeling anxious? Like, what is the reason? And the reason can be, oh, I want to see what my favorite creator posted. Like, that's inspirational. That's a good reason. But if the reason is driven by something negative, then no, probably not great. And turn off your phone and touch some grass, literally. I did touch grass on the spiritual retreat. I actually pulled a piece of grass, and that saying, go and touch grass. I touched a piece of grass, and it was really nice actually just to be out in nature and touch grass. So anyway, moving on to the second one. I realized that I'm always rushing, and as a culture, we are always rushing. Just think about it. I mean, it seems like we're always in a state of we have this thing to do, we have this thing to do. And for me, the issue of rushing is that it makes me be anxious without having to be anxious. Like there's no reason to be anxious, but because I'm rushing to leave the house because I'm going to be late somewhere, I'm already just like my blood is just, all over, and that's not the phrase. My blood is boiling. That's not the phrase either. Well, you know what I mean. I'm just kind of all frantic. And John Mark Comer talks about in his book, Practicing the Way, about removing hurry from your life. And he wrote a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which I still have to read because some of you are recommending that to me, and people in my life were telling me about that. So I'm definitely going to read that. But something that I learned from this Practicing the Way book is just how our world is set up to make us just rush and think that we always have to be doing something. And I think that we can get confused with the idea of productivity and busyness. Like we can think that we're being productive, but really we're just being busy. Maybe you are being busy with the wrong things instead of productive. So you're just doing busy work. You're not really knowing what you're doing. You're not moving in a direction, but you're doing something so you think you're productive. But really, maybe what's the most productive in that moment to do is to not do anything at all and to just sit in silence or journal or collect your thoughts. And I think that's something we're missing. We always have to be running around. It's also the whole idea of hustle culture of we always have to be doing something, we always have to be making money. And I just don't think that's a way that we are going to be happy living. Of course, we want to work hard, but the idea of rushing while you're doing that just doesn't seem great to me. And I know it's not great because I have a habit of being late places and I rush to get out the door, and it's not healthy for me. It's not at all. So I'm working on changing this because when I was on this retreat for 3 days, I did not rush. We went to certain places, but we didn't have that sense of urgency, oh, we have to go at this time. It was just very just so relaxed. And of course, we have things in the real world where we have to be somewhere like on time. But there's a way to not rush. There's a way to rest, to take extra time, to leave margin in your, time of getting ready. And so that's just something that I've really been focusing on, that idea of not rushing. Okay, and then number 3, we put a lot of value in the things that don't matter. This is something I learned on my little trip the past few days because I realized that, well, I didn't wear makeup. I did go out to this nice dinner once, so I put on makeup and, a nice outfit. But something that I realized was that I look at myself in the mirror too much. And not nearly to the degree that I used to, which is great. We're always making progress, we're always changing. But to be completely honest, like I do look at myself in the mirror too much. And it's not out of hatred and it's not out of pride, but for the most part, it's just out of like, oh, like let me just check because it's a habit. It is a habit that I've been conditioned to constantly check myself in the mirror. Starting in middle school, I would check myself in the mirror between my class periods, in class, at lunch, every single chance I got to see my reflection. And that was because I was very insecure and I got made fun of for the way I looked. So that's one thing that made me very insecure. But that habit didn't fully go away. And so I still do that. And so when I say we put a lot of value into the things that don't matter, I'm talking about like our appearances, our looks. And so that was something that came to me this trip. I have realized, because I've done podcast episodes on this before, but it's just something that keeps coming to light, even in the like small little things. And so putting value into the things that don't matter, it makes us unhappy because we're putting value into this expensive bag and these expensive shoes and how much money she has, or oh, I don't have the new bag that she has, I need to get that. And we do live in a world of consumerism, and I think that social media has made that rampant because we always want to have what the other girl has on the screen. It's like, oh my gosh, she has that really cute bag or like those really cute shoes. And like, obviously it's good to have nice things and to treat the possessions you have nicely, but to put so much value in them, I think is damaging, because then it makes us happy to spend a bunch of money and go on a shopping spree instead of just sitting in silence and praying and talking to God and building a relationship with him. Like, these things that don't seem super like these things don't seem in the moment that it's causing us to be unhappy, but over time, the more and more we put our value into our possessions, into our looks, it's going to make us unhappy because it will never be enough. We'll never have the amount of money that that person has. We'll never have, all the clothes that that girl has. Like, there's always going to be someone better, in lack of a better term. Like, you're always going to be wanting more. And instead of having that mindset, why don't we be content with what we have and realize that we can't take anything in this earth with us when we die? Nothing. Nothing that we have. So, yeah, I like having nice outfits and I like wearing jewelry, but I don't put my value into the things that I'm getting. And so on this trip, I realized like I didn't have a ton of clothing, didn't bring a ton of things, and I realized I could really live simpler. Like, I can simplify my life by getting rid of a lot of the clothes I don't wear, by getting rid of a lot of the things that I don't use. Like, why do we need? But yeah, it's like, why do I need 15 reusable cups? Like, aren't they reusable because I can reuse them? Like, do I really need 20 like stainless steel, you know, bottles or cups or water bottles? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't think we really need that much. And so obviously it's like, ooh, it's that new shiny thing that we all want. But ultimately, I think that consuming is just not going to make us happy. And I think we think it will make us happy. Maybe in the moment, getting that new Stanley Cup will make you happy. Not bashing that here, but just saying, like, maybe getting that new pair of jeans will make you happy in the moment, but it's not going to lead to fulfilling joy. You see what I mean? So, anyway, I think we really need to not obsess over the things that don't matter. And another thing I was wondering, when were mirrors even invented? Because, like, what did people do? Like, they didn't probably value their looks as much when they weren't looking at themselves all day. So, something that I'm going to take away from this spiritual retreat when it comes to not valuing the things that don't matter is number one, I'm going to really change the habit of not looking at myself in the mirror all the time. Like, okay, to put on a little bit of makeup, to fix my hair, but like for the rest of the day, we don't need to check ourselves. We don't need to check ourselves in every single mirror that we see. Number two, I'm going to go through my closet and remove a lot of the clothes that I just don't wear and I don't need and that are just taking up space. I want to remove the things in my space that just don't benefit me and aren't needed. Because why hoard certain things. um, Sometimes things have emotional value to it, but sometimes we need to think about, does this have emotional value or spiritual value? And I think we have to think about it in that way of like, I'm not going to take this to the grave. So like, do I really need this? And then the last thing that I'm going to do to not put the value in things that don't matter is check in with myself whenever I have certain thoughts that come to mind. Um, of like, oh, like, do I look okay? Or, oh, I don't know what to wear. I'm kind of like anxious about, what to wear to this event. I'm going to think about, what am I valuing here? Am I valuing my looks, or am I valuing what the Lord says about me? Like, my value should come from the Lord, not in the things that I place it in the world. You know what I mean? Oh, and another thing, I forgot to mention this earlier, but talking about thoughts. When you remove distractions from your life, like the past 3 days when I didn't have my phone as a distraction, I could hear my thoughts much clearer. Anytime I had a thought in my brain that was maybe like negative or, not so great, it was an opportunity to work through that. It was an opportunity to sit down and journal, invite the Lord, the Holy Spirit in and ask Him, okay, why did I have this thought? Where does this trace back to? Can you please take this thought away from me? Can we transform this thought? So like it can help you hear your thoughts clearer when you spend that time in silence away from distractions. Apart from what I've already told you about how I'm doing life a little bit differently, I also wanted to share the solution to this all. If you've listened to prior podcast episodes, you know that I put an emphasis on building a relationship with the Lord. And I think to not be unhappy in these areas in our lives that I just mentioned, we have to have the Lord be our Lord over our life. This meaning, I think that we put God in a box and we view Him as just a box to check off, and when really we should make Him a part of everything we do. So anytime I start to rush, I should remind myself, okay, rest in the Lord. When I get distracted on my phone and use that to cope, when I have negative emotions, I can remember to recenter my focus on God. When I start putting value in my appearance and the things of this world, I can remind myself I can't take anything with me when I die. I can, back to the rushing bit, I can check in with myself midday and recenter my focus and just look to the Lord, even during the busyness of life. Instead of putting God in a box, we need to bring Him in all these things that we do. And then I don't think we will be living these unhappy lives that we are living as a society. These three things that I believe make us unhappy are just hitting the surface, but they have been so relevant in my life recently that I wanted to talk about them and I wanted to share them with you because even with all the work that I've done the past few years on my life, I still notice these different things. And obviously, we're not going to be perfect. There's growth that's going to take place. And so there's always something that I can be changing, always something I can be refining to really enhance my life and live a godly life, live a life for God, with God. Um, and so don't be too hard on yourself when you're, looking at all these. Like, I don't want this to be overwhelming to you. I purely want it to be, what is one thing I can do to take this next step? Maybe maybe you're thinking, maybe I'm doing some of these things in my life, but they're not that bad. Like, it's not to the extent of like, I'm rushing all the time and I have no time to like sit down. But maybe there's a little improvement you can make in your life to make it just a little bit better. And same with putting my value into things that don't matter. I may not be to the extent that I was in middle school and high school, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better and I'm slowly evolving, and I can make these little fine tune changes. So, anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I hope that you can think about what's one step that you can take in each of these areas, and maybe something else that came to mind too, that can push you in the right direction. And invite the Lord in. Pray about these areas. If you are constantly rushing or you're constantly late places, like, invite the Lord into this. If you don't have a relationship with God, you can start by opening the Bible. You can start by calling out to God. You don't need some fancy prayer. You can just literally sit there and let God love you. I think we forget that God is everywhere. We don't need to go out into the wilderness to interact and be with him. Sometimes it can help to remove distractions, but I can sit down in this chair and I can call out to God. He is already with me. He just wants me to invite him here. He just wants to be with me. He wants me to want him to be with me. But with that being said, I hope that you can focus on changing some different areas in your life so that you can become closer to God, so that you can live a fulfilling life and not the life that our culture pushes on us. With that being said, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful week. And if you did like this podcast, make sure to subscribe, follow for more. And if you did enjoy it, make sure to like it and follow on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. I hope that we can continue to create a life we love together, and I will talk to you next time.